Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is credited with discovering a significant and previously unknown connection between geometry and musical harmonics. His groundbreaking research, which he calls sonic geometry, suggests that our geometric universe is a symphonic system functioning in literal harmony with itself. His sonic geometry videos have been viewed millions of times, while his research and findings have been featured on Gaia TV, History's channels, Ancient Aliens, and others. He is the author of the new book, As Above, So Below, The Quantum Teachings of Jesus, where he shares that many of Jesus's teachings resonate with modern discoveries made in the field of quantum mechanics. Welcome to the show, my friend, Eric Rankin.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure to be doing this again with you. We did one years ago, and I love your show, and you do a great job. And you know I have a podcast, so I'm kind of critical of how people do their podcasts, and you do a great job.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, it's been way too long. You have such fascinating work. If you haven't seen the sonic geometry documentaries, they are amazing. I actually have your Chimes right here. You played them. Yeah, you played them for the first time for me at Burning Man. And the sound resonated, and I was like, what am I hearing? And you're just like, it's perfect sound. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit about your background for people who aren't familiar with who you are. And we're going to dive into your book, Sonic Geometry, Ancient Aliens, all kinds of fun stuff, the mystical. I'm just so excited to have you back.
Absolutely. Well, I love talking about this stuff. I can, it's a conversation I know in one form or another I'll be having for the rest of my life, because, and especially the sonic geometry work, which if you go back to 12, 13 years ago, I was the last person that should have been getting or receiving or understanding even any of this information. I failed geometry in high school, algebra, calculus, never took any of those classes beyond high school, never took calculus, never took any physics classes. Seriously, did not have any business doing or speaking about what I speak about today in front of scientists. I mean, real dyed-in-the-wool physicists, think tanks with some really high level people. And I'm just stand in front of them going, how did all this happen? But I'll take you through the quick story. Back in 2012, I heard a voice in my head, which more recently now, I just sort of figure it's my counsel or my guides. People have a million different words for what is happening when we get a downloaded channeling. Back then, it was not for me. And I heard this voice. I was in my office building in Fullerton, California, instruct me to go draw a triangle on my whiteboard. And I'm like, I don't know what this is that's happening right now. But I got up and I went into my conference room and I drew a triangle. And I said, well, there was, whatever this is. And I was like, no, now make note of the sum total of its three angles. And probably the only thing I remembered from my high school geometry was a triangle, its three angles will always total 180. So I'm like, okay, 180. I remembered that. It passed the test. It's like, no, now play that as a frequency. And I'm like, wow, play that as a frequency. You mean like 180 cycles per second? Or that's all I could think of. And if you had wanted to play frequency, a perfect frequency, you'd have to buy a tone generator. 5 years prior, you would have had to buy a specific piece of equipment. But now our smartphones have all of these devices, all these apps. And so I downloaded a tone generating app and I played 180 cycles. And it was just, da. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a triangle's sound, I guess. And am I done? Like, no, you're just getting started. What's the next geometric shape? And I'm like, well, I guess it's a square or a circle. Square has 4 90-degree angles, so that's 360. So I played that as the tone. And I heard this exact octave. In music, we call it octave. It's the same note, but twice as high in pitch or half as low in pitch. Those are octaves. So whatever this note was, it was the same note higher. So la, la. And I'm like, well, there's a musical interval. And right away, I am a musician. I've played music all my life. And I'm like, that's, I guess, kind of interesting. Like, they're like, what's the next geometric shape? A pentagon. And that's and I had to start looking up these things on my computer to know that a pentagon, the sum total is 540 degrees. If it's 5-sided, it doesn't matter if it's wobbly or perfect like a pentagram. it's going to total 540 degrees. And when I played that, so if the triangle was la, 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 there was this la, 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 la. And I'm like, wow, that's a fifth. I know that to be a fifth. And a fifth is the most important interval in music today. It's how our tuning system was created. You start at C, you go up to a fifth, that's G, fifth up is D, D to A to E, and then it circles back around to C again. So fifths are very important, and they're also the basis for a major chord, a minor chord, a seventh chord. You're going to play that first and fifth interval with it. So it's like the most important interval in all the music, Western music we listen to. I found that was fascinating. And then it was a hexagon. That was another octave of the triangle, just higher. And then when I got to the heptagon or septagon, I realized that was the third. Now we had all three notes contained in a major chord, la, la, la. And that's the chord that you hear when everything in a movie, it's like we're programmed, and it's almost the most interesting to think that when we hear that, even in music that's not constructed the same way we build music, you go to India or Japan, you'll still get these first, fifth, third intervals, because when we hear that major chord, something inside of us says, everything is right. It's the music that would be playing in a movie when the war is won, the game is won, the king and queen are announced, the couple's falling in love, the angels are singing. That's going to be accompanied by a major chord. And then the octagon, that's as high as I went, and that was another octave of the fifth. So I'm like, wow, geometry is revealing a major chord. And I was fascinated. I was lit up, and I'm like, how could I have not known this? This has got to be a huge bed of information, because I'm interested in things, but I never heard it. So I go on my laptop. It might even be the same one I have, because I don't replace equipment very often. And I Google search geometry revealing major chord harmonics. And I write that in any way, configuration I can think of to express it. And I could not find a single match. And I'm like, well, that's impossible. You can find a match for anything you're looking for on the internet, even 12 years ago. And that can't be possible, that people that study this stuff, I'd listen to people like Greg Braden or Nassim Harriman talk about geometry and frequency in the same sentence. Surely somebody would have to know what those reveal. Nope. In those 12 years, I've become the guy that discovered that geometry reveals major chord harmonics. And that becomes a big deal. And I sound like I'm totally tooting my own horn, but I'm just speaking it. If our universe is geometric, the way physicists now believe it is, there is a geometric essence to the construct of the matrix that is our entire universe. If it's geometric, and geometry is based upon the simplest geometric forms, that's why I didn't go further. By the time you cover the 3s of triangles, the 4s of squares, the 5s of pentagons, the 6s of hexagons, the 7s of heptagons, the 8s of octagons, you've covered some multiple of those. You don't need to go any higher. And those reveal this major chord harmonics. It's signaling that everything is right. It's this signal going out to the universe saying, this system is working in beautiful harmony with itself. And when that just came over me, and to this day, I just said it and it sends chills down my spine, because I'm like, this is such a big deal. There was a girl that had just graduated a video production class through college, and I had gotten to know her fairly well through Facebook. I sent her a page of this download of information, and it was much more than what we just talked about. It was all these other connections and number sequences. And she got it, and she goes, I went to school to make this video. And it took her a year by herself to make this video that we call Sonic Geometry. I wrote and narrated the text of it. It's about 20 minutes of information. We thought if we could get 5,000 to 10,000 people look at this video, they were going to be lit up by it. Of course, you're going to get trolls. Within a few months, we had millions of views. And I'm like, what is going on here? And people were writing in instead of the trolls. I was getting really serious people, school teachers, college professors, physicists writing to me and saying, we want to talk to you. And then eventually shows like Ancient Aliens or Gaia, you don't call those people, they call you. And my life has just been the most insane, unpredictable ride since that day in August of 2012. And I'm just so grateful for it all. And I know it means something. I know there's so many connections, so many coincidences, synchronicities of what gets revealed in this bed of information. And you don't even have to be great at math. You just have to notice these number sequences. So 432 would be one of them. An octave down, 216, go an octave down, 108. Same tone, just lower. Well, 108 shows up all over the place. The mala necklace in Hinduism has exactly 108 beads. When you see that meditating naked Buddha, the healthy, thin Buddha, not the fat, jolly Buddha, and it looks like people think he has these curls of hair. That's not. He was bald and he was meditating. And the story goes that these snails realized how hot he must have been, and exactly 108 of them climbed up on top of his head. So these, Joseph Campbell called these mathematical mythologies, and he came across them. He was a famous mythologist who revealed the hero's journey to us all. And he realized these cultures that couldn't have been communicating with each other yet, not only had their version of the hero's journey, but they had these mathematical mythologies where these same number sequences were embedded in their myths, religion, sacred structures, cathedrals, temples, pyramids. That's when it starts getting crazy, crazy weird. So take 108, that same number, 108. Our moon is exactly 108 moons away from Earth. Our sun is exactly 108 suns away from Earth. The sun is 108 Earths wide in diameter. That's just one bit of showing you what mystery is happening here. 432, take that number sequence. There's 43,200 seconds of half a day, 43,200 seconds of night. Combine them, you get 886,400. 864000 is the diameter of the sun. 43,200. If you take the Great Pyramid of Giza, take its base, lay it out in a straight line, multiply that times 43,200, you get the circumference of our planet, Earth. Go from the base of the pyramid up to the apex, multiply that times the same number, 43,200, you get the core of the Earth to the North Pole. That was built at least 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. Many experts think it's much older than that. So not only is there a message coming through about this harmonic essence of the universe, the message that really comes through is there's an intelligence that is leaving Easter eggs and codes and clues for us, kind of just waving and say, hey, are you guys ever going to put these puzzle pieces together and acknowledge what we've left here for you? It's an avalanche of number codes, and they all fit together like, not kind of, sort of, they fit together like gears in a Swiss watch. And you stand back and look at it and you go, if I do the lecture just right, even if it's in front of nothing but scientists, there's a point where they will lean back and go, huh, this is incredible. And they don't have an explanation for it. But even people like that, you can just blow away with simple facts.
Well, that's amazing. And there's so many different ways we can go with this. I think it's so fascinating to think that, Nikola Tesla said that if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of frequency and vibration. And when
energy.
we think of frequency, and energy, and frequency, well, what happens then is the geometry, right? And the geometry is the mathematics. And so it's interesting that you can hear it, you hear a sound and it's perfect sound. And like the chimes that you had at Burning Man when we met face to face, we'd interviewed before, and then I got to see at Burning Man, which is fun, and showed me the chimes, and you're just like, well, I just tuned them to the geometry, and you could hear it. And when I play them for people, I'll play them over their body in a dark room or sometimes in a light room. It doesn't really matter, but you can't tell where the sound is coming from. It's like it's coming in your body. You're like, what is going on? And it's perfect sound. And it's interesting because I don't know if your research has taken you to Tartaria. I know it's taken you to Egypt and all these other places that we can dive into, but the idea of the, ancient Egypt with when you measure out the mathematics, it's just absurd how everything just lines up absolutely perfectly. There's no way it could be random. They're master builders. But in the Tartaria research of these old cathedrals, well, you look at cymatics, which is the visual representation of sound. You got the soundboard and you got water. Well, those cathedral windows are matching perfectly. And if you go to Egypt with people who are highly intelligent and have researched it, many people hypothesize that it has something to do with energy and frequency. And when you go into a room and you hear perfect music, perfect sound, perfect symphony, it feels amazing. You can emote, you can feel safe, you can feel scared, you can feel any number of things, and it happens naturally without you trying. And so what if they could expand that frequency citywide to not only harness energy, but also make your people feel a certain way, whether positive way or what I think may have happened recently is negatively, when you have all these kind of darker influences, which TV and media and all these sources like radio, which could have started out good, but when all of the stories are dark in nature or easily accessible, you can find positive stories. And that's why I like your podcast, and that's why I started mine, to hear things that are positive, that are uplifting, that are inspiring. But when you look at TV, it's not just one murder show at 8:00. It's a slew of murder shows, and that's being fed into your consciousness. So anyway, it's a bit of a ramble. I'd love for you to just...
No, we could talk about all of this because we could talk for days. So we'll just have to keep it, contained to however long we have. So those frequencies, I did not commission those chimes, that chime set. Michelle, the co-host of my show, she has a friend that manufactures chimes in Australia. And he said, I want to send you a couple of different chime sets that I've made. And she goes, great. This was just a random connection that I did not know about. She gets the chimes and they're numbered on the side in the wood of the exact same numbers as the sonic geometry information. Yeah, if you look at those, if that's the sonic geometry set, it will say 720 and on the end.
I've got both, and we may as well play them for people, eh?
Yeah, if they can hear it, absolutely.
Yeah, they may as well. So hopefully it'll come through the mic since we're talking about it. But you also made another set, or got them commissioned. That's the Sumerian King List.
King's
right?
List. Yes.
So hold on. I'll play this and just listen. So whenever I do my coaching, or the reason why I have these on my desk is whenever I wanted to focus or reset, I play these and I listen to them with intensity and intention. Just like when you see something harmonic or you set your intention, it's an aid to help you get into harmony. And when you hear them, so if you're listening to this on the show or you're driving in your car, pull over for a second, just to hear these and just listen to the best of your ability. And I'll just play them once or twice. I don't know. They're pretty nice, but hold on one second here and they will come in a second.
Yeah. For some reason, you can't hear them.
You can't hear them.
You can't hear them. It's the
craziest
thing.
Crazy. What?
Sine wave will not go through a mic usually.
Oh my goodness. No, that's so sad. Well, you know what? I've thought about this for a while to do like a little guided meditation with them. So I'll put some stuff with the show notes where I play them where people can hear them. So perfect. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah. So here's the funny thing. So Michelle gets these chimes and I look at them and I go, wow, those numbers, that harmonic are exactly the frequencies in the sonic geometry video. And it's important to talk about exact frequencies because you just made a great point. We all are overexposed, through radio, every media, every electronic media there is, we're exposed to frequencies. We did a thing, and I don't know at what point in history we did it, but we don't listen. Most people, I would say 99.99% of the population, have never heard mathematically perfect harmonics. They do not hear the perfect harmonics of geometry. They do not hear the harmonics that they know insects and different life forms resonate with, are attracted to, behave differently. And she goes, and she goes, are you saying that you think these chimes are related to your sonic geometry video? I go, no, I'm just very curious. She goes, not everything's about your sonic geometry, And I go, I'm not saying that. I want to know how they arrived at this because it's fascinating. She goes, well, let me do a conference call with him. So a couple of days later, we do a conference call. The three of them are on it. And I said, hi, his name is Joaquin. And I said, hey, Jacqueline, I love the chimes. I want to order a set. And I'm curious, how did you get the information? And he goes, there's this video you got to watch called Sonic Geometry. And it's like, and Michelle's just rolling her eyes like, oh my God. Because for the same reason, that information was not out there. And these mathematically perfect harmonics, we don't get to hear anymore. We get to hear close approximations. But if you play close approximations with pure tone, it sounds like it's almost shaking you apart. You can listen to a D major chord, same notes that are on a piano, and it sounds fine on a piano or a guitar or any instrument. But if you play them as a triad of 3 electronic tones, you will not get a harmonious sense. It will feel like, I play for people when I do my workshops, but if you play the numerically perfect harmonics of sine waves, it just goes, it's smooth as glass. There's no oscillation, there's no vibration to it. And again, it just feels right. So I'm thinking, well, 2 things happened about the same time that electronic media came out in the late 1930s to the masses. Was the tuning system had already been called equal temperament, fudging off of mathematically perfect harmonics. And the other was tuning used to be based around an A at 432. It was called concert pitch tuning. And they said, well, now we're talking about every orchestra in the world's got to be tuned to the same note, a middle A. We've got to pick what that frequency is going to be. Somebody said, well, rather than 432, let's make it 440. It's a little brighter. Who knows what it is? But as soon as you go to 440 in equal temperament, you're completely, all this information that I can talk about for days or weeks or years vaporizes in a puff of smoke. It all goes away. So whether you're talking about the Freemasons or ancient cultures that knew this, or possibly extraterrestrials that were trying to share it with us, or just downloadable channeled information, all of that goes away when you start just working in the tuning system that we have invented for ourselves as human culture. Unless you're the 1%ers that know about this information, unless you're connected to the Freemasonry line or what we call the Illuminati or whatever their agenda is. But it feels to me like you could make a strong case. All we got to do is change the tuning, and we have all this information, and nobody else, none of these numbers will come up. They won't come up in music sheets. They won't come up in music theory. They're not going to be known. And I don't really talk about the conspiracy aspect of it, but if there was one, it happened at the exact right time when electronic media was broadcasting to us, and it was officially decided that it would not be 432, it would be A440. It would not be perfect Pythagorean tuning. It would be equal temperament, this fudged tuning. And so I got to think, we have been in the dark since music was starting to be shared electronically, records, radio, any of that. We've never heard mathematically perfect harmonics, yet the algorithms for it, the number sequences that are revealed by those frequencies are everywhere in nature, in the Fibonacci spiral, in the pineal counter-rotational pattern, like pine cones, like our pineal gland. That stuff, the mathematics behind it more or less just goes away. And that's what I always want to share is, this is too big of an information. Einstein said coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous or hidden. And these coincidences are in the hundreds, if not thousands, of these numerical coincidences. And yet most of the world's population is completely oblivious.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't even really know the power of it. I'm reminded of the John Carpenter film, They Live, where they're sending out a frequency and it's a negative one. It's a brilliant, amazing movie.
Where he puts on the glasses and sees what's really going on.
The glasses, yeah. And, it's fascinating, though, because I remember being in Nepal, and I was, this is when I was meditating with monks, and I went into I heard them doing group ohms one day, and I asked if I could go in. So when I went in, I can't tell how many people, maybe about 100, but as they would do in unison an ohm, my body felt like it dematerialized. And I started doing with them, but it would dematerialize and then come back. So there's no doubt, if you look into sound, frequency, and vibration, that there is something to it. And when you look at cymatics, you know that there's harmonic patterns that, create a scatterborn disharmony. And, there's perfect sound that creates beautiful patterns. So we know that. And so it can be used like anything for good or for maybe confusion, right? Or other purposes. There's so many ways we could go with this because, you've done some research in, ancient Sumeria and ancient aliens and stuff like that, but you've also written this new book. So we have done a podcast deep dive. I don't know what episode it is, but if you look up Eric Rankin and Matt Belair, you'll find that show and you'll find Sonic Geometry. Check that stuff up and we might circle back to it. But I'd love for you to speak a little bit about your new book as well to make sure that we dive into that, because I'm sure that's going to take us 10 different rabbit holes in itself. But what inspired you to write this book? Because I remember even the first time we met, you're like, I did the first 2 Sonic Geometries and I'm done. And then a third one came out and I don't think you really had any intention of writing a book. So I'm curious what had happened to make you want to write this book and what you're sharing with it.
Yeah, the book, it's odd. I grew up Christian. I'm going to send you a copy of the book. I grew up in a Christian household. I went to a Seventh-day Adventist elementary school. But by the time I was in actually high school, I just started questioning things, and I realized questioning wasn't welcome in the church environment. It's like, you know what? Your faith will get you through this. Go back and read the Bible. There's nothing about your critical mind, the questions you have. I'm like, that doesn't seem God-like to me. God, why would God give you this mind capable of critical thinking and not ask you to use it when you're thinking about God? And so I started looking at other religions. I was attracted to Taoism and Buddhism and Eastern philosophy. And the closest religion, I guess, I found to it was science of mind. They call it, they don't call it science of mind anymore. And I just kind of abandoned my Christianity. And yet, when I went to one particular church from a friend who became a pastor, and he talked about Jesus in this whole new way, it was like a Jesus totally just came back alive to me. This is 25 years ago. And I go, I want to regroup around the teachings of Jesus. I don't need to read the Old Testament. I don't need to read even most of the New Testament. I just want to read what Jesus had to say, which included even the Gospels that are not included in the Bible. There are many other Gospels that are not in the canonized Bible. The Gospel of Thomas would be one of my favorites. And I sat down and I go, I am going to reinterpret the canonized book of Matthew, because it's the most complete story of Jesus' life. It's the birth, it's the ministry, the healings, the miracles, and his death and resurrection. So I retranscribed that, and I almost felt a little sacrilegious or blasphemous even doing that. And I sent it to a few friends, and they're like, who's going to want to read this? Christians aren't going to want to read it, and nobody else is going to want to read it because it's too Christian. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. So I didn't even think about it for 22 years or so. It completely was out of my even memory that I'd even done this exercise. But I was helping my ex-wife move, and I found one of these manuscripts. I didn't even think one existed. And I read through it and I go, gosh darn it, it actually feels like something is kind of here. So I had to, it was written on a 5 1/4 floppy disk, onto a dot matrix printer. So I had to get it into a form, into a Word document. And I sent it out to some friends with it. Now it had a prologue and an epilogue, where I came from, why I wrote this. And it had the epilogue at the end. What should we think about Jesus? Because I'm not trying to convince anybody to become part of any religion. I'm certainly not. You can believe in the teachings of Jesus and Buddha and, Gandhi and Martin Luther King all at the same time and be totally fine. Muhammad, totally fine with it. It's when you start feeling you have to box it into the parameters of religion that it starts getting sticky and maybe not what everyone wants to adhere to. And 2 people who read it said, it needs more of your voice in it. And I'm like, what does that even mean? So I don't know, but somehow throughout the whole book, it needs a little more of your take on what you're writing about. And that just felt like crushing. I was ready to, if I was going to write it as a book, it was already done. And I had to sit on it for about 6 months and do nothing and just think, what would I do? And I ended up doing these reflections. The book of Matthew has 28 chapters. So not only does it have my translation of it, my interpretation, it has a reflection following each chapter of one part of that chapter. And in those chapters, because I'm writing it now with my expanded awareness of physics and quantum physics, especially, I'm like, man, some of the stuff Jesus was talking about is almost as if he knew that there's the quantum essence of reality. And so I was able to run it through the lens of many quantum teachings. So there's some classical experiments that maybe people have heard about in quantum physics. One of them would be Schrodinger's cat. This thought experiment of you put a cat in a box with some poisoned food, put the lid on it. When you open the lid, is the cat going to be dead or alive? And you can conjecture all you want. Oh, it's poisoned food and he's going to eat it and obviously going to be dead. Or no, it smelled bad and he didn't eat it and he's going to be alive. Well, Schrodinger in the early 1900s, or might have been late 1800s, said the cat is both dead and alive in the quantum universe. The cat is both dead and alive until it's observed. And that became a huge thought experiment, expanding quantum physicists' mind. It's like something has to be observed to actually even be considered real. And then when you get down that, then you can introduce the double slit experiment, where you fire photons of light through two different slits in a metal plate. And what we expect to see would be two slits of light on the wall behind it, but it creates this waveform. It creates many different, expanding waveforms horizontally, unless you look at it during the process. If you hook up an observing device, a camera, then the photons and protons behave the way we think they should behave and go back into two slits on the wall. So that got to be in the book. The importance of resonance and vibration and the law of attraction, all those things got to be into the book. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus is commissioning his disciples. They're getting ready to go out and spread the good word of God's love for everybody. And the disciples say, how do we tell people that God is really in you, that you know that what God knows? And he says, tell them I am motion and rest. Well, you cannot get to the most fundamental aspect of everything than the concept of waveform, which is motion and rest. Motion and rest is breathing in and out, the jellyfish swimming, the up and the down, the opposites of, as Alan Watts always talks about, my favorite philosopher, Alan Watts, is you can't have one without the other. And all of our existence is built on that, and waveform. So that's the book that came out. It's the As Above, So Below, the Quantum Teachings of Jesus. It's not a thick book. It's a very easy read. People are loving it. I can't believe the reaction to it. People are reading it to each other. They're buying it in bulk and sending it to friends. I just never would have imagined the reception to it, and just saying I've devoured it in a day, or other people like, I just want to digest it and I'm only reading one chapter, a night. It only takes like 20, 25 minutes or so to read one chapter. It's fulfilled me with such joy, and to come back around and acknowledge these spiritual masters. And Jesus happened to be the one that came through to me at an early age. So he's kind of the most important one to me. But certainly there's these other spiritual masters, and especially from the East, that when you talk about Taoism, you talk about the way the universe moves and is working under its own laws. That's important stuff to know. And then you combine it with our humanity's yearning to know more about the spiritual aspect of who and what we are, where we came from and where are we going. That seems like important stuff. And this book is a very light read, but it touches on all of it.
Well, I appreciate that background, and I'm definitely excited to dive in. It's interesting because ever since the Law Summit, where the Bible was brought up so often, I began to get curious about it, read it a little bit more often, and had the same idea. Like, I just want to know what Jesus said. I want to know what his teachings actually were. And then the other thing was to interpret it for myself. So Cal Washington was on the podcast, and he might be one of the most knowledgeable guys on the Bible. And I don't think he might be religious. I'm not really sure. I haven't asked him directly, but he's very spiritual, and he's had some pretty out there spiritual experiences. And he goes, you have to read it and interpret it for yourself. And I think, like any spiritual teaching, or really any teaching you may ever get, especially if it's deep, or philosophical, it will change over time. That meaning will change with your life experience, with your knowledge and everything else. So
It
I'm
should
curious.
change over time.
It's yeah, absolutely. And so when you began to look at the teachings, like what are some of the main points in this book that we can take to learn from Jesus to deal with some of the challenges we have as far as like life purpose, having faith, like some people believe in the religion so much and they're like, this is the path. I'm like, well, how do you know that? How do you know for sure? How do you know you're doing your life purpose? How do you know you're doing the right thing? It's a very challenging world. And I think in the Bible it talks about being in the veil, where like you don't know everything, but these masters, they knew, they had a higher knowledge. The same with the Buddha, had a higher knowledge of how things worked, so had more ability to teach and try to share these topics that are paradoxical and maybe transcendental. I don't know, but it's just like in meditation, or if you have a direct God experience, it's beyond words.
Yeah,
There's no way to put it into words, so it's really hard to bring it back down because it's so big.
right. And here's the thing, when you said the word master, and I think I probably did too, spiritual masters, all of a sudden you start creating the separation in the paradigm, because these people were not masters until they got the information. And the information they got, Jesus said it numerous times in many ways, what I can do, what I know, you can do, and you can know. He said it. And people think, oh, well, can people walk on water? Blah, 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 blah. Well, if you go back and really read the Bible, in that point in Matthew, when he does walk on the water, one of his disciples says, Master, can I go do that? And he goes, you absolutely can. Come out. It was Peter. Peter walks on the water towards Jesus and then freaks out at the reality of what's going on and sinks. And Jesus grabs him by the collar and says, what happened? And he goes, I just lost my faith. But that word master, we should not let, because it creates this vertical channel that we think we're not worthy of the information, and we have to go through someone that is worthy, that's connected to the source, and bring it down. So whether it's a Jesus or a guru or somebody, we have created by just even the words master, that I am not that, so I have to go through someone else. And Jesus said, you do not need to do that. Now, Christians might take offense with that and say, no, I am the way, the truth, and the light, only through me. But more times than Jesus ever said anything like that, he said, why are you asking me what you should be asking your Father directly? I don't know this thing. Ask your Father. When you pray, you're not praying to me, you're praying to your Creator. I think these were just people and something inside of them. And we have millions of people like this on the planet, maybe billions. Certainly everyone has the potential, but millions of people that are receiving and opening themselves up to the expansiveness of what we are, the miracle of what this matrix of reality is, and can start manipulating it. So prayer or affirmative thinking or law of attraction, those aren't just woo-woo concepts. They're like the understanding, just like Neo in the Matrix. That was a localized phenomenon on Earth, but now you're talking about the matrix of creation, the divine matrix, of which you are an expression of. Like the ocean is God and you are a drop in it. You are a part of what everything is. And you drop into that space. You just allow yourself to drop into that space. And now when you think, no, my thoughts are things. My thoughts are actual things that have true effect on other people. Firstly, myself. Nothing you do happens without a thought first. If you want to address how powerful a thought is, nothing you build, nothing you do, no aspect of your job, your relationships happens from your thought about it first. So that's how powerful thought is. And then you think a thought is an electrical impulse. It's very faint, but it's still an electrical impulse. All of nature is delicate, soft, barely measurable electrical impulses. Who's to say that your thought does not carry outside of you on the energy of your intention, your awareness out into this network? Picture a network like a true net that's just using that as its own carrier waves to reach something else or to reach outcome. That's what Jesus, I'm convinced, was trying to convince us of, is that we are divine. We are expressions of God. We have the same abilities that we would call miracles today and even back then. And we have just forgot. Whether we were guided off the scent by a nefarious other, or if we just got lazy and said, we'll do it our way. We seem pretty smart and we figure out how to keep ourselves alive, but we're fumbling around. We're just coming out. Seriously, modern humanity existing as a social culture is maybe a couple thousand years old. First written language 6,000 years ago, that's math that we talk about, inventions like pyramids, wheeled axle vehicle, plow, pottery wheel, loom to weave fabric. Those are all inventions that came about 6,000 years ago, giving birth to modern society. That makes us just like a blink of an eye ago, we were that. And now we're taking our first step at the same time that it looks like everything's kind of falling apart in ways, is the same moment that so many people are actually waking up to a bigger picture of what we are. And I hope it's not going to be the majority. I can tell you right now, it's not going to be the majority of people that are going to awaken. And I don't want to say that from an egalitarian place, but if you believe the news, if you believe that politicians are going to fix things, if you believe in borders and isolation and separation, you are not going to get this information. It has to be when you're opened up, when you're able to receive and let your mind do what your mind does, your consciousness adhere and vibrate with the universal consciousness of creation. It's there. It is there in every microfiber of everything this consciousness is, and it's just inviting us to be back a part of it. And I hope we get there. However many people it takes, I hope we get there to tip, because we are in a tipping point with this AI, with our old consciousness of kill or be killed, solve our conflict with violence and destruction. If that's the mindset and we combine it, control, with what AI can do, that tipping point has already happened. And now it's going to be something more like a miracle that saves our species, where we care about each other, we take care of each other, we take care of the planet. It's not going to be in the AI program. And I don't even know what you think about it, but that's my thought.
Yeah, well, you brought up a lot of great points. One that I love is that you don't need a gatekeeper to God. And this is one that I heard that phrase for the first time when I was at the Parliament of World Religions with David Lombard. You had all these things. You don't need someone, you don't need a priest in like this little, bucket that's going to get you there. That person has no more or less relationship to God than you do. That is endowed within you. That is a gift that you have directly. And that's some of the challenging of the interpretation of the Bible in some religions for me, where it's just like I have to bow down to a person, because I get, if this person demonstrates some sort of super high level of mastery, then maybe. And I've spent my life where I've sought out gurus. I've listened to gurus. I've listened to all these different things. And the good ones will tell you that you're the master. You're the one who has to cultivate that relationship. You're the one who has to seek that connection with God, and it is within you. So I think that that's a very important point. And in the Bible, it also talks about that this is what I like when I read it more is like, this is a spiritual realm. And when you see people who are doing harm, they're locked in materialism. It says you can't worship mammon and God. You can't worship money and materialism and getting things and God at the same time. You can, you can have a relationship with God, your creator, with doing what's right in it. And we all know what that is because we have it naturally, right? And when I did the law summit, it's like there is no law but God's law. Everything else is an act or a statute by man. Can think about the Native Americans when they put up the border, be like, what do you mean there's an imaginary border here? We would go down here. Who's to say that you have this authority to stop us? But men are doing that, which is unfortunate. And, obviously it's not an ideal thing. So the teachings of Jesus are very fascinating for many reasons, but I think the one that I'm always curious about is, how do I grow my relationship with God. And one of the way I've experimented in a lot of different ways. One of them is deep meditation. One of them is constant prayer. One of them is journaling. Recently I had a Daniel Crenzel on. He talked about the God walk. And I like that because it was a walk and a prayer. And it was just a combination. It's a simple thing. And what it was a commitment every day. That was the big piece for me, is every day I'm committing to growing my relationship with God, with prayer and all these different things. And I'm just curious, with what you've learned, what are the biggest takeaways for growing our relationship with God, growing our faith, and having a life direction? Because I think that many people experience the negative emotions of guilt, shame, trauma, uncertainty, confusion, because they don't know who they are. They don't know why they're here. They don't know their purpose. And my thought with that is that you can figure that out through prayer. You'll figure out all the money stuff, all the life stuff will be equally challenging. But when you know who you are, when you know when you want to give back, when you're following your passions a little bit, when you have some self-awareness, when you're doing work where every day you're like, how am I doing a little bit to make this world better? And it's completely aligned with what I enjoy. All that guilt and shame and all, it starts to naturally go off, because you're like, this is all I could do today, because that idea is so big, but maybe you're just a good parent that day. Maybe you're just a good friend. Maybe you're just a good person who was good to a coworker that day. All of that counts. It's just that different intent, rather than going through atheists, where like there is no meaning. We're in a spinning ball in outer space forever and nothing means anything. So that person would be more likely to succumb to negative ideas, to negative ideologies, to what I do doesn't matter, so I'm going to just go take your stuff because nothing matters. Or I was created by God. I have divinity with me. My Father is there. I am a part of all creation. And recently I had the idea through some birthday mushrooms that, like, no matter how bad it gets here, because you're in the States and you were in a great part of the States, but I was in Canada and it was so bad for 2 years. I watched people lose their minds and just become completely what's the word? There's a lot of different words for it. I'm trying to not use it. Just they weren't using their mind anymore. They lost decency. They lost common sense. So no common sense, no conversation, no mutual, nothing for 2 years. You know what I mean? And so the idea, because it got so bad, it was a little bit depressing. And the mushroom insight was, if I could just hold the idea of heaven on earth, if I was just to hold that idea into that little bit, maybe it was just a bit of kindness. Maybe it was just a bit of compassion. Maybe it was just a bit of, sometimes I like the Bible a little bit, where it's like, you stop evil. And as a martial artist, is like, if I see somebody beating the crap out of someone, I'm going to go stop that thing, you know what I mean? From harming another, like just basic rules of being a good human being. So anyway, that's my rant, but I just like the idea of bringing heaven on earth. So I'm curious if you want to add on to that rant, or you want to talk about growing your relationship with God.
They're both one and the same. So probably the idea that Jesus wanted to express most, because he did. I mean, I'm just going from word count of looking at his, at least in the Gospel of Matthew, was heaven on earth is already here. You're already in. The only separation from you and heaven is your mindset about it. What you've been convinced that you are not a part of it, that you are separate from it. He said, heaven is here right now. The kingdom of heaven is already within you. So if you start your connection with God or wanting to grow it, you just acknowledge that connection is already there. In Star Wars, there was that line. I didn't like any of the first 3 Star Wars movies, the actual 1, 2, and 3, but there was a line, or maybe it was 7, 8, 9, where it said, I am one with the Force and the Force is one with me. Just take the F in Force and make it source. I am one with source and source is one with me. Same idea. That changes everything. From your acknowledgement that there is source and you are one with it and it is one with you. Start your day with that. I am one with source and source is one with me. Now, all of your prayers, all of your thoughts, all of your directives of what should I do today? If you have a job, I don't care if you're making hot dogs, flipping burgers, or you're a brain surgeon or Elon Musk. What should I do today? You can do anything, but run it through your awareness of you are one with this symphonic system that is guided by a source that created it. And you can go as deep into that as you want. And like you said, we know what's right or wrong. You can be of service or you cannot be of service to yourself and others. you have these choices. It seems to be what we would call a God-given gift, is our free will. Well, yes, we have free will, but we don't have a free pass from consequence. So if you're going to go out and just be a horrible human being, just thinking about yourself and don't care if you kill people, step over them for a job advancement, whatever it is, there's something in your heart that says, I know that's not right. You won't forgive, you continue to judge, whatever it is. You know it. It's already in you. That's part of your mystery guidance system that we call morality. But that is your connection with God. And then it's up to you. Are you going to listen to it or are you not? Are you going to grow into the ever expansion, never stops expanding? Are you going to grow into the ever expansive process of being of service, being kind, considerate, compassionate, forgiving, non-judgmental? Or are you just going to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off, worried about where your next meal's coming from, the roof over your head, having enough money? Are you famous enough? Are you rich enough? None of those things have anything to do with your connection to source. Jesus tried to say it. Listen, you're worried about all these little details. Look at the birds, look at the flowers. I'm not worried about anything, and they're so well taken care of. Don't you mean more to God in your consciousness than a flower or an insect or an animal? Yes, you absolutely do. Your ability to rationalize and choose your behavior and your thought and your conduct. Absolutely. So we are divine. We don't have to go searching for our divinity. It's already in us. Jesus said it. Other philosophers and religious teachers said it. You just need to expand that. Let that be the kernel, the little, I don't want to say irritation, but like in a pearl, it's the little thing that grows the pearl. You have to have that first acknowledgement somewhere, and it's not a hard acknowledgement. That's and I think that's Jesus' primary message. Kingdom of heaven is already within you. Grow that relationship, grow into that awareness, and live a miraculous life.
I absolutely love that. And I love those quotes that you're referring to in the Bible. And when I began to read it, I began to unearth these quotes that were really inspiring to me, right? Like, give not, what about fears? Like, give not any concern for the morrow. The day has enough concerns for itself. Like, look at the birds and the flowers. Are they not taken care of as your Father would take care of you? But it comes on this premise, an idea that you were created and that there is a God. And that's, it's a very powerful premise to work with. And I like how you articulated working with that. I would love to hear what you have heard in the Bible and your take on the purpose of evil and how to have peace, because that's one I've always struggled with. It's just I see this evil and I see systems and people intending harm and succeeding, and then people falling for it. You know what I mean? Like even in a simple one, being a martial artist and being in this space where I coach individuals, sometimes it's in sports or life coaching or law of attraction and all these different things, and also studying mindset, martial arts, and a little bit of magic. I know that there's deception, and some people talking about, oh, I'm using my energy to do this, and I'm like, that's a martial arts trick. I did spend time in China where martial artists could break stone with two fingers. What you're doing is a magic trick, and you're deceiving people, and it's bugging me. And then it's like it irritates me, right? So so we have this on mass, is kind of this mass deception and different levels of this harm that's atrocious on different levels: starvation, human trafficking, endless stuff. What have you read that can help someone make peace with like the evil? What is the purpose of this evil? Why is it here? How can we have that inner peace and have that kingdom of heaven within? And then also know, it's just like, I just wanted to stop. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like as long as I've ever been alive, I'm like, why are we not in peace? Why are people why are people fighting? Why are people trying to do all these things? And I find out there are people who intend that, and it makes it hard for everybody. And I have trouble dealing with that sometimes.
Yeah. So big questions and big concepts. Alan Watts, I listened to him so much. And one of the themes, his recurring themes in his lectures, is you can't have one without the other. Think of it as like looking at a coin. You can't have the front of a coin, the head side, without having the back of the coin, the tail side. All of religious teachings, not necessarily from Eastern religion, but certainly all the Western teachings, including the very first writing, the Sumerian story, you have two evil gods. You have Enki and Enlil. They're both creator gods. One wants the creation to understand what gods understand. The other one says, no way, they're not ready for this. And all these stories, whether it's the Adam and Eve story, banishing them from the Garden of Eden, or the flood story, or the Tower of Babel story, those were like resets. That humanity was getting too far out of whack, and somebody's got to come in and say, we got to reboot the system for them to get what they're supposed to understand. So if you have duality, and it looks like nature does run on duality and polarity, for every up and down binary system, for ones and zeros, positive, negative, you have all of these things. Push, pull, that seems to be, well, if you put it in a religious context, you think of, well, if there's good, then there's bad. And in the good and the bad scenario, you say, well, what is the good? The good is what supports the system and everything in the system. The bad is what starts destabilizing the system. Yet nature wouldn't necessarily look at it that way. It would just go, it is just playing out. There will be consequence for whatever it is you consciously choose. There's animals that do what they do with these complex patterns. I mean, from bees that have 20 different complex individual behaviors they do, to lions eating other animals, to whatever. They have things, but there's no evil intention, as far as we know, in doing that. It is just them functioning from their state of consciousness and awareness. We have a much broader, as far as we know, expanded state of consciousness. Yet, if we're motivated by fear, which seems to be our primary motivator, the concept of evil starts getting a little harder to pin down, because I would guess you could talk to someone like Hitler and say, you're evil. You're as evil as any human has ever been on this planet. And I would guess in Hitler's mind, he's saying, no, I'm trying to actually create a better world where everybody gets along. The Volkswagen, it was his idea. Volkswagen means the people's car. Everybody will have a car, the chicken in every pot. We just got to go through some difficult things before we get there. But did he consider himself evil? I don't know that he did. I'm just throwing this out there. The idea of sin. What is sin? The actual literal translation of it is missing the mark. As if you were an archer and you're trying to aim for the target, your motivation is good. I want to hit the target, but you missed. So it really gets a little deeper, this concept of sin and evil. And I think if you acknowledge what motivates people to do it, it's fear. And fear motivates many people that do good or do what we would call evil things. So you have to go back to, does this support the healthy system that I am a part of? If this is an all-connected system, everything is connected to everything else. We live in a connected universe. Am I a cancer cell in that connected body, or am I a healthy cell in that connected body? Then you start looking at it differently. If I kill people that I disagree with, and they don't have free expression, and they don't get to go out and have families, if I block people with imaginary borderlines, we're lucky enough to live on the side with the water. Sorry, all of you idiots that live on the other side with no water, we got it and you don't. That's not supporting the whole system. Buckminster Fuller believed in his deepest heart of beliefs that the industry of peace could be even bigger than the industry of war. And that sounds crazy, because half of every tax dollar we spend is spent somehow on the industrial military complex. Buckminster Fuller said you could spend all that money, everybody have a job, and be supporting everybody, supporting the planet, supporting the animals, supporting each other. It's our mindset. And if we're motivated by fear, we are going to do evil things, because at some point you go, well, it's me or them. It's I live or they live. It's they've got the food. I'm going to die if I don't eat that food. What's in the way of it? That person. I'm going to go get it. If I have to kill them, I'll do it. That's not spiritual teachings. That's the furthest opposite end of any spiritual teachings. So when you start resonating with source and the way the system works, the connectivity of it, and everything you do affects everything else, then you start taking personal responsibility more seriously and go, I won't do the things that I know. It's not rocket science. It is not rocket science to know what is supporting the system, the ecosystem, the human system, the animal system, the planet. It's not rocket science. We will often opt for the easier choice, the quicker fix. And that's where war is. And well, let's just neutralize this problem in the moment. Let's go bomb Japan. And now Japan, 40 years later, all of our cars were coming from Japan. There's the dynamics are way too complex to think that you can just do this momentary thing and snuff out and have a scuffle, and that's going to put some sort of lasting echo throughout the universe. It will not. We are just at our own peril if we decide to act out of accordance with what we know is right. It's kind of, Jesus said you can be a child and get this. Through the innocence of a child, you can understand what I'm talking about. And we want to complicate it. We want to make it seem very complicated, and I don't think it is. Go out and do right action. Buddhists would call it right action. How about that?
I love that. Yeah, I love all that answer, man. It's a big topic, and I love hearing your perspective on it because it helps me move about my days and the challenges that I have in my own life and just looking at the world. And one of the things that comes from the Bible and many other teachings is that we have the power that, you as a child of God can overcome any evil, have no fear of any kind of evil outside of you, which is very inspiring. And when you're
Let me stop it just right there, and then you come back in. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to die.
Yeah.
The worst. If you take all of your trajectories of all the evil things you're doing, it's because you're afraid. And what are you most afraid of? You're afraid of dying. After that, you might be afraid of dying that you weren't famous enough when you died, or people aren't going to remember you in history once you died. But what you're really most fearful of and motivating you is your fear of death. If you get rid of this fear of death and you believe in your soul that we are eternal, that your soul is just the thing that is happy at the moment, is being expressed through this meat suit, great device to get you around on planet Earth. But you just think there's a part of me, the most important aspect of me is eternal, that never dies. You're going to worry less about what happens if I don't eat, what happens if I die, what happens if my children die, what happens if any of these scenarios. When that fear is gone, then you can start living truly in the flow of what creation is trying to be. Yes, you will die. Your family is going to die. No matter what you do, you're going to die. Your friends are going to die. Everybody's going to die in the physical form. But if you believed I'm eternal, I'm connected to source, I'm a part of source, it's a mystery to me right now, but there's so much that all the teachers that we vibrate with tell us, no, there's an eternal kingdom of heaven. It started before you were here on this planet, and you were a part of it then. You're a part of it here and now in a meat suit, and you'll be a part of it in some other form, maybe just energy, but your consciousness is eternal. Lose that fear, your life becomes something completely different. Sorry to interrupt.
I love that. And it's such a fundamental worldview that is completely transformative to most people and how they live. Because one, as you're saying, at the root is a fear-based motivation. And that is most people. That makes you powerless. It also makes you a victim. Now, on the flip side, if you have the belief that you are an eternal child of God and that you are protected by God, that is such a more empowering way to live. It's such a more empowering frame. It's like, no matter what challenge I have, I'm not going to be worried because I know that I'm going to be taken care of. Even Eckhart Tolle, when he had his enlightenment thing, he just sat in a bench, basically didn't work. And, he got taken care of. And I've heard of many stories of people having these kind of spiritual awakenings, and they watch how God and the world takes care of itself. Even recently, I did a podcast that was really amazing on the books of Anastasia, and she's living this parent woman that's real, living in the forest of these ringing cedar trees, and everything just works in harmony there. And they take care of her, and she takes care of it. It's like a totally different way to live. And you've got indigenous teachings, of living in harmony with everything for years. It's totally possible. It's just, are we going to intend and move toward integration to that system? And I think that the system that's being created, and this is in the Bible as well, I don't really call it Babylon. It's like, buy or sell the mark of the beast, which is so crazy close to becoming reality. It's like, it's like, there's so many things. I'm like, yo, that is right there in this book. Like, what is going on? You know, there's a lot of things pointing to that book, which are so accurate. So it's like, well, do I want to be a part of Babylon? And, or is there going to be another way, you know, something that I can do to do something else? And I think there's always going to be another way. You always have another option.
Absolutely.
And the one thing I wanted to share for the people who, you know, kind of have challenges with, you know, some of the negative stuff and people's, you know, that like I do, like some of the negative stuff that happens in the world, is like that you got to give over to God. You know what I mean? If one of the answers that I liked in the podcast before was that if God gave us free will, then we must have the free will to do wrong, to sin, to be evil. Right. However, if you're in alignment with God, like we said, you are protected and you don't have to worry about that, but they're playing their own game over there. And it also says, to your point earlier, that the path to heaven or God or home or whatever the case is narrow, and not everybody's coming. And you can see that now, that so many people want to stay in ignorance, and they have the opportunity to wait. And it's not that hard. You know what I mean? It is hard, but it isn't. You know what I mean? It requires an open mind, an open heart, active listening. Like you said, a child knows, you know, if do you have right livelihood? Are you like, you know what, I do this job and it does harm people, but I make a lot of money. That, you know what I mean? You can find a job that makes enough, but you're putting materialism, but I need this and that. You don't, you're going to have a house. You're going to be taken care of.
What was Buddha's first step to becoming the Buddha? Renounce. He was from a wealthy family. He renounced his wealth. He goes, this is not the path of spirituality. Jesus renounced his wealth. Any prospect of wealth or wanting to chase wealth. It's such a common thread that you just lose your fascination or your fear about the having enough. You have enough already, until if you're breathing and you're thinking, you have enough. How long that goes is up to you. But try and do it in the way that is based on right action, not at the expense of others. That's what cancer is, gobbling up and polluting the system and multiplying. And now what we have here with the AI system and everything else, I don't think any of these companies are the least bit concerned of people like me. I'm 60 years old. They don't care. I can talk until I'm blue in the face and like, we're just waiting for you to go, because we're addressing the kids that have been raised on devices, that love the technology, that would not trade this technology and even think it was a possibility, something that I never grew up with, they would never leave behind. And if you're in that place, you're going to be in the place where they're just going to tell you what you're going to do, what your entertainment's going to be, how your money is going to be tracked and traced, how you are going to be tracked and traced, how you are going to be commodified, not just what you build, you are the commodity. If you ever saw that movie in the Unsocial Network, people that really understood, the people who launched Facebook and all these things, said, if you're not paying for the commodity you think you're using, you are the commodity. So all of these social networks, TikTok, Facebook, all of those, Pinterest, you are the commodity, and they're just selling your information to feed its own system. So unless you consciously opt out, which most of the young population that have been raised on this system won't even know there's anything else. They won't even understand that there was ever anything else. So it's really up to the people alive now that are aware that there's other options, that you can align yourself with nature and not think that your digital avatar is more important than your actual self. We're an important generation of people alive on this planet. And no, it won't be the majority. It will be the great minority. I don't know if it'll be as small as 144,000 people like they talk about in the book of Revelations, but it's going to be a small percentage of everybody on the planet that said, I'm not going to be just the cog in this man-made system. I want to be a cog in the universal divine system, not in this. It's like opting to be in the Matrix. It's the inverse of the movie, The Matrix. People want to be in it, like the guy who ate the steak. I know this isn't real, but man, it sure tastes good. What's the difference? You have to, that's what awakening is. You awaken to the fact that live what this organic experience is, expand the organic design that you are, full of its miraculous nature that's probably just waiting to be turned on. They say that 90% of our DNA, they call junk DNA because they don't know what it does. Well, what if that's waiting just to be flipped the switch that makes telekinesis possible and telepathy possible and levitation possible and everything else? We don't know yet. To just willfully just surrender to what's happening, I go, well, that's it. It is, but it's not going to happen with me. I mean, I'm pretty much at the level. I almost threw my phone away and said I'm getting a dumb phone, but I didn't, because there are the convenience. We're sold on convenience. I can check my banking. It tells me where to go, how to drive. It's a great camera, and there you go. Okay, and then it's listening to you. I don't know if you've noticed in the last couple of weeks, because everyone knows that they're listening to you, they're monitoring your searches, everything else. It is getting so instantaneous that you just talk about it to someone. You just sent a link to someone. Hey, I look at this. It didn't even say I'm looking at an e-bike right now. Hey, look at this. Pretty soon you're just flooded with ads for e-bikes. It is watching your every single move that matters to them, which is the commodity. What are you buying? You know, which one of us are you making rich at the top of the delivery chain, the supply chain? It's got to be something different. Maybe it takes just the total collapse of what we call this system to rise phoenix-like out of it. I hope it does not, but there's going to be some version. Life wants to live, and life finds a way. Like in Jurassic Park, life finds a way, and humanity will find a way and continue to evolve into what we're really supposed to be, into our spirit, into our spiritual mastery, our divinity.
Yeah, absolutely. Our technology can be a benefit, and as it evolves, we need to learn how to manage that. And getting out into nature and having natural experiences and conversations, sitting around the dinner table with your family, just stuff like that. It's you moving back towards those things and using them for the conveniences they are, but learning how to manage them, because what's happening is it's coming so fast and it's really taken over. And then the young kids, they don't have this other view. So I am a firm believer in the power of nature, getting out, camping, snowboarding, being outside. That's where you can really listen to and get a connection with God. In Jesus in the Essenes, it says there's 4 ways to know God: meditation, good teacher, study, and nature. Did I say nature? That's the last one, right? So I always went the 4. So, just sitting out in nature, with no one around, and or farming, the simplicity of farming, growing food. 90% of people don't know how to grow food, including myself.
Yeah,
and that's
too.
one thing I want to remedy. Right? These are natural ways to live. So what is more natural to live? You've got your family, a beautiful family, you're growing your own food, you have a simple life, you know what I mean? You got good neighbors, but it's we have this artificial system, which are the cities, and all of these, which essentially each city is a little Babylon with these shining lights and these attractions and all these different things to lure us in, and then we sell our time for money so we can go play at this casino of the city, when there are peaceful people still that are out in the farms and they're just living a simple life, and they're like, this is good, like farming is friggin' hard, let's just say that. However, it would be nice, like back in the day, if we're like sharing and growing things and having a community, simpler, easier, less devices, less want of all of this like dopamine hit of the casino Vegas of and that's like any city these days, it's all the same.
I'm certainly, if people are listening to this that aren't in the same wavelength, they're like, you guys are just hypocrites. You're using technology right now to have this podcast and everything else. I am not anti-technology. When television first came out, they said, isn't this going to be amazing as a teaching tool? That was their first thought of what it was going to be, was an incredible way to share teaching, to educate people. It just became what it is because there was more money in the dumb. Whatever they watch the most is what we're going to produce. That's why news is fear-based. It's what people keep coming back for. They don't come back for the good stories. They don't. That's why you've mentioned the murder stories on TV, one after the next, because that's what people coming back to. There's something that fear resonance keeps them suckling at that energy, rather than saying, No, so technologies could be great, and I'm not anti-technology, but when our consciousness is being suppressed by technology, the expansion of our consciousness being suppressed by technology, then we have a problem, and we are in that state. Our consciousness is not advancing as fast as our digital technology. And our biggest concern should be that AI is going to act just like us, only faster and better and more efficiently. It's going to think, oh, well, you guys kill each other to solve problems. Why wouldn't I? You designed me. I'm functioning from your instructions. I mean, it's so weird. I watched, the Voyager spacecraft. They were launched in the 70s, Voyager 1 and 2. We sent these spacecraft into deep space. Just keep going until, you can't go anymore. And there was a record on there with all kinds of greetings in multiple languages. There's a little video player shows, and it's nothing but the good things about humanity. We're peaceful. We do this. We live on this beautiful planet. If somebody got that information and said, let's go to Earth, man, that sounds great, and saw what the reality is like, fuckers, you lied to us.
This is misleading.
This totally false advertising.
Yeah, someone's getting fired for that one. Let's go check this out.
At least put both in there, like, yes, because truly that's what we are. That's what humanity is such a mixed bag. Is yes, we are aligned. We go to church to hear these beautiful messages of how we can be connected to source and how we can be better to each other. And then we abandon that hour experience and go back to quote unquote real life for the rest of the week and just be horrible human beings to each other. We should at least acknowledge the dichotomy of what we are. We are not hopeless. We're very hopeful, but we're also
Oh, hold on, everybody. He just froze. He'll come right back. It happened once before. He gave me the heads up. So hopefully he'll come back here any second. Come on, Eric. There we go. There we go. We made it all the way this far.
We made it a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that rant. And the one thing that it kind of comes to mind is like when I think about the we, that's where I feel a little bit of the victimhood kind of thing, where it's like I put it all back onto I, and everything outside of me is up to God. And if we want to awaken, if we want to have the 144,000, if it's World War III, if it's an AI takeover, whatever the case is, the only thing that I can control is literally myself. That is it. My work, my livelihood, my attitude, my communications, my relationship, that is it. And if I keep it there, that's the faith and trust comes in. I will do my best to be a representative of God to the best of my ability. And I'm not the perfect example. I'm not, I'm very rough around the edges, and I make a lot of mistakes. And I love my buddy Brian, who we're living on his land right now in the house we rent. And he always says it's okay to make mistakes. And he gets this from, his studies in law. And I just love that. It's just like kids. And like you said, with sin, missing the mark. And if we look at like when you talked earlier about having that direct relationship with God, look at a kid. You're like, oh, well, you haven't done this, so you're not going to go to heaven. You're not good enough. You're not divine. You need to go to this Catholic church, and this guy's going to then all of a sudden do some sort of physical thing in the reality to make you holy. It's just so absurd, right? So we need to remember that as we get older, we get more serious, and we think we're supposed to have things figured out, but we have no idea what's going on. And people who pretend to know what's going on, they probably know less because they're firm in their ignorance of thinking they know what's going on. Even if they know something, it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction that could expand into infinity, like some of these crazy mathematics. What's the one that you look down on and it's like something sequence where he looks like a little Buddha? You know that one?
No.
The Mandelbrot set.
Oh, the Mandelbrot set. Yes.
Look up the Mandelbrot
fractal set. Yes.
Yeah, right. And so you just know it expands and expands and expands. But what we can control is our intent. We can control our intent, and we can mostly control our actions and what we do. Right. And so if we're managing those two things with prayer and intent and awareness, that's about the best we can do when we're being the representative. And I feel like that's what's going to allow us to have that heaven on earth, right? And to see all the blessings that we have now, right? This is heaven on earth, and most of the stuff is coming through the scrying mirror, which is the phones and the tablets and the TVs and the television, right? You shut all that stuff off and you had like a little community. Like I think about a little Amish community somewhere, and my uncle went to one, and it's like way Western BC on an island. They would have no idea that they'd have no idea a pandemic or anything was going on other than from the radio. Affected them zero.
Other than the marauding hordes with their guns are like, hey, start growing us the food.
Yeah, yeah. If that happens, then it'll affect them. But they were like 3 years with no effect at all. Nope. So it's interesting. So yeah, I like just the idea of taking the power back. Did you want to comment something? You look like you're taking
just two things, and I'm sure we've gone way over. But when you said individual choice, Einstein said war is over the minute every person puts their gun down. War is over when every person puts their gun down individually. You're taking the right action of knowing I'm not going to kill other people. I'm not going to participate in that system. There you go. I mean, that's not me saying that, sounds pie in the sky. That's Einstein saying that. The other one is when there's this term that people often use incorrectly, cognitive dissonance, and they use it lots of different ways. But the classic example of what cognitive dissonance is knowing the right thing and deciding to do otherwise. So if you know that brushing your teeth is healthy and you don't brush your teeth, that's cognitive dissonance. If you know that smoking cigarettes is unhealthy, but you smoke anyway, that's cognitive dissonance. So once you know what good, right action is that supports the whole system, makes you feel better, makes people around you feel better, safer, taken care of, that you care and they care about you, live in that field. Make your action be in harmony. Again, the word harmony. Let your action be harmonious with your awareness. It's actually just so not hard. It's when you think, yeah, but they're going to do this, and what if they kill me, and they're going to do that, and blah, blah, blah. You do the right thing. You do the right thing. You do the right 5 words. That's it. Really, just live that reality. And you just said it. You do it. Don't worry about what other people are doing, including what they're doing to you. That's the hard one for people, is don't worry about what other people are doing, including what they do to you. Jesus talked about turning the other cheek if you've been hit. I know that doesn't necessarily go with your martial arts training, and I know you wouldn't start a fight, but if we're getting literal, it does mean that. It just means don't let that, because then there's no end to it. If violent action triggers violent action, pretty soon they're just going to take your violent action and reinforce it with more violent action, and then you have war. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like the answer you probably want to hear, but
no, well, hold on. Let me just step in on it, because I think it's a great example. Because as a martial artist, if someone's going to hit me, it means something is wrong with them. They're hurting. Yes. Nobody whole, complete, harmonious, full of self-love, having a good day is trying to hit me. Now, the purpose of martial arts and having that self-protection is I'm probably going to be fine and I'll probably avoid it. You know what I mean? And then the other thing, though, it also talks about in the Bible is you have the right to protect your family. Mm-hmm. So, it doesn't mean he's like, so if someone's coming at your family, you have the absolute right to dummy that person. Right. And we don't know what was wrong with him, but in general, turn the other cheek. Something's wrong with, maybe you bumped into the guy, right? This is a different thing. I bump into a guy. He's super upset. He throws a swing. Boom. I miss it. Right. Or he clocks me. And I'm like, yo, what's wrong? Like, let's just settle it here. Yeah. Now, a distinction between going at my family, you're done. There is no turning the other cheek. And it does talk about that in the Bible. And I had to work through that to figure out what was okay, because it must be okay to protect your family. Right? You know what I mean? You can do any force necessary to protect your family, but the chances of you having to do it are very minimal. And 99% of those examples are going to be a bump, an argument, a road rage. You know what I mean? All perfect scenarios for letting it go. Right. And then, I don't, do you disagree with to be able to protect your family? I think you're fine with that. Because I can't just let him come in a day. That's not happening.
I understand that. And the best thing, the most heartening thing you said in your thing is that's probably not going to happen. You're not going to have the boogeyman come after you and your family the way it's shown in movies and, you know, these murder mysteries on TV. It's probably not going to go like that.
And where you get that idea from, right? Even my daughter, she's watching a bit of I watch how she'll get an idea of fear and play it out. And it bugs me. And I keep saying, don't, like, that's where these ideas are coming from. You know, it's a very, you can be infected with these ideas, and that's a very dangerous thing, you know? So we need to be very mindful with what we're ingesting. And in the Buddhist, you know, philosophy, they talk about mental nutriments and everything that you're taking in. It's not just your food, it's your media, it's your television, it's your radio, it's all these other things. So I kept going because I knew you froze. So hopefully you caught some of that, but please reply.
I heard it all. Luckily, I heard it all. We're not very different. We probably, because nobody's exactly the same. So I don't know that we'll get too far along. I think we have different ideas about self-preservation and protection of family. In context, I wouldn't even say I disagree, but we're not in the exact same place. But we're so aligned, and we so believe in supporting other people as that being the thing that would minimize danger for us. That if more people were just out there acknowledging that our purpose is to be of service, to take care of others, and then in the flip side, we will be taking care of the others that we helped. I mean, that's just the way it works. Reciprocation happens. So I think we're much more alike than not. But I truly do believe, because what ends up happening, you are very aware of your limit. You're consciously thinking about the escalation of something. A lot of people are not, and it becomes a slippery slope. It's like, well, I'm protecting my family. And then that starts like, well, what is the threat to your family? Well, it's a governmental threat. It's a freedom of this threat. It's a physical threat. Pretty soon you're back in the field of thinking about the threat more than you're thinking about the non-threatening existence that you could be living and other people can be living. So the only reason I don't think I have the answer that matches you is I don't think about it very much. I don't think about danger very much. I don't think about people being threatening hardly ever. I don't think about negativity very much. I live truly like this Pollyanna, pie in the sky. Other people would go, you're just living in a fantasy. Well, so far, yes, I have. I'm 63 years old. If I were to die today violently from someone's violent hand, I would have died believing every other day before this one that people were good and great and they cared about me. So I'd much rather live in that space.
And it wouldn't have changed that random event like a car accident, things like that. Yeah, totally.
And so, you know, it's just, it does get down to some difficult questions, but we, you know, truly we want to align ourselves more with, and, you know, we sound old fogyish when we talk about watching TV and movies and video games. The industry says, hey, people know what fantasy is. They know that people dying in a movie is not real dying. I call bullshit on that. If you watch and are entertained by the idea of seeing mayhem and gore and dismemberment and aggressive driving, I truly believe that games like Grand Theft Auto and movies like Fast and Furious, combined with an industry that says, hey, this is what the public wants. Let's make the cars out of the factory be loud, fast, obnoxious, and dangerous. You're creating the powder keg that you can't complain about once everyone's driving. And here in Laguna Beach, it used to be such a sleepy little artist colony. It sounds like the Grand Prix all day long, just people with their Ferraris and their exotic cars and their muscle cars, and then the cops chasing them and the sirens and the ambulances. This town does not sound anything like it did 5 years ago. And I'm just like, it's people that were weaned, that grew up on these video games, on the movies, and the technology of going fast and being loud and not caring. These people are going up and down this little street of mine behind me, 10 o'clock at night, just deafeningly loud, and like, fuck you people that are sleeping and got kids and are eating dinner. I don't care. It's really such a way of saying I don't care about anybody. That's not the world we want to live in. We want to live thinking that I care about people and they care about me.
Well, I love it, buddy. We could chat all day.
We
We're just
could.
heating up. I could, take a little snack break, come back. We should just do like a day one where we set
Just
apart a
break it up.
Saturday. We'll have some snacks, you know what I mean? We'll invite some friends on around. Maybe we
I would
actually
love
should,
that.
man. Sit around
I,
the couch, you know what I mean? Get and just have a nice chat. But I love all this and getting other opinions, right? One of the things I love about this conversation and talking to you and feel blessed to be able to even call you a friend. And we met in person and you're like that. You are who you are. You are who you see. You're such a friendly, beautiful spirit. And I'm sure you carry that all the time. But these are deep topics that people don't think about. They don't contemplate. They don't converse about. They don't, right? Like you said, I'm a martial artist and I have consciously played all that out. How much power do I use? But it'd be the same thing. I live in where there's black bears. I've contemplated, a strategy plan for black bear. That's part of like survival and having a family. If you're going to go
yes.
outdoor camping, if you're going to be doing go in the backcountry snowboarding, you need to know all this is like danger assessment. And then the key is you got to let it go. You know what I mean? It's like part of it is like you buckle up your seatbelt, you understand the dangers. I have to understand the dangers when the snow conditions change, right? But then you got to let it go. You can't live in that. You can't be putting 90% of your edge before that protection. And to the martial arts analogy, what you're saying, that's the idea of weak people that are always needing to protect from something else because they don't have the strength and power and capability, and that connection with God. It's like you grow in strength and like, I'm not worried about anybody in public messing with me ever because I have the capability within myself. I'm not trying to start fights and that should never happen. Right. So it's like, you got to go into strength and then it kind of dissipates, you know what I mean? And in it's applicable to everything.
It really is. And my son is 33 years old. He hunts. He has guns. He has personal protection guns. And we've talked about this. He's a real philosopher and he's such a great human being. But when it gets down to guns and would you ever use violence, he goes, I don't think about it. Because I have a gun, I'm not thinking I need it, but I would much rather have it in that 1% of the time when I did need it than not. And I understand.
Yeah, and that goes into kind of deeper stuff about the Second Amendment. And so I'll go one touch into conspiracy stuff. The reason why what I think is happening overall is they're going for this one world government, the one world communism. The one thing that's challenging them is the Second Amendment of the United States. Because even if you're taking over Canada, China, whatever, it's like, okay, China's taken over. You can't take over your people because of the Second Amendment. And the reason they had it was from government overreach. People shouldn't be able to rule over other people through arms. We should all be in peace. We should all be in harmony, but everybody needs to be disarmed. You cannot only have the people that are creating the rules with the biggest guns, because whenever this has happened in history, people got mass murdered because certain people cannot be trusted. So the idea is, if you're going to take away my free will, if you're going to take away all my choices, I have an ability to protect myself, and that's the root energy of it. But we need to transcend that. And you and I both know that. But the strongest people are the most peaceful people. The most violent people that I know are the most peaceful people that I know. And it's always this weakness, and the weakness uses these tools to use other people to do it in big numbers and cowardice. And you see gangs, they're cowards. They're actually weak. They'll never go at the strong. They're like cats hunting like that. So it's this psychology. But I think the only thing available is to do it as the individual, to have that strength, to have that peace. And then and we said, maybe not everybody's coming, but that collective, it's just like, look, we just want to be left alone. Please don't take. Right. And we know this has happened in history many times, and I don't think we're above it happening again. And that's the whole, it's such a deep debate. So we're getting into it again. But, that as a Canadian kid, I had never understood guns and I just wanted peace. And now I understand the necessity for these things. And then I also at the same time have complete faith in God, and like some of these bigger things will be outside of my control, but I want to be strong and capable and aware. And then peaceful, and when you're strong and capable of aware, you don't get messed with. I've had this in all my travels. It's the reason why I've been able to do so many things and have these things happen, because I was strong, capable, aware. And even though I have these things, I'll run real fast in the other direction. One of my best buds, Corey Wilson, he goes, I can run faster scared than you can mad, when we were joking around, threatening him one day. And I was like, yeah, I'll just run the other way. So I don't know. I hope for peace. I hope for this place.
And
to
I know
make
that
sense.
I know that
Yeah.
about you. Why I really enjoy you so much is I know your heart. I know your consciousness. I know that you are very much aligned with what is going to save our species and our planet. When it starts getting down into semantics, you and I would probably have a few different ideas, and that's okay. As long as people aren't killing each other over those differences, I'm okay. The deal with guns for me is like when the Constitution was drafted and everything else, and the right to bear arms, it's like, well, we had rifles and you have rifles, and it's kind of a fair match. Now we have technology that we could just wipe you out and you have your guns. And maybe the mentality is that's why we have our AK-47s and our automatics, is we want to just kind of keep it level. But if it is military supremacy, we're not going to fight the military machine. If it gets down to that, I don't even want to be here for that. I would take myself out before it got down to, it's me fighting the government with my AK-47 against them and their tanks and their everything else.
I agree. Well, we got to go a step deeper, because I've done these deeper ones with buddies who are militaristic and things like that. So what I think from studying the Law Summit and some of these higher realm things, okay, so I don't think they can take your free will away. And I think there's a karmic repercussion. And I think that the people who are doing these things, they can be like the ants, where they can push the ants to fight. But if they squash the ant, they know they get the karmic repercussions. And so that's why I'm not too afraid of somebody taking my free will away in that kind of sense. On a mass sense, I think it's like, that person has to pay the karmic debt. And there's an interview, Mark Gober was on my podcast, interviewed a guy who had a near-death experience, and he was in the military, and said that he had the emotion of the person he killed and then the family, and then it went out. So it seems like there's this very karmic repercussion. So I don't really think that the government's going to go and push that button, because every individual, like we said, we're not going to go on our own people. Right. But it can't be World War III will be a couple pushes of a button. And if it is, it's just going to blip in a second. So again, like that's where you're going into the fear mode. So, in every generation they had it, right? Every generation, it's like, this is the one, this is the one, this is the one. So it's like fortifying my relationship with God is number one, being strong and capable and aware, and being the best representative of God as I forget each and every day, and as I make mistakes each and every day, but try to come back to that home base and just try to do some work that has some meaning. That's a pretty good day. You know what I mean? Get a sandwich in between. I'm doing all right.
I agree with you. And it's true. And you asked the question, just reboot yourself. When you've fallen out of alignment, we all do. I certainly hope that I'm not sounding like I don't fall out of alignment with some of the stuff I talk about. Us in the human experience definitely do. But just reboot yourself. Just reboot yourself and acknowledge the truth that you came from source, and your connection to source is there. Whether you want to personally feel like you're severed from it, that's your choice. I don't know why people would choose that, but you have that choice. And just remind yourself as a daily exercise, when you get up and you're in the shower or whatever it is, and just go, I am one with source, source is one with me. I want to grow in that mindset. I want to grow in that awareness. It will change everybody's life individually and then collectively after that.
100%. Well, my friend, great conversation. Could chat to you
2
all
hours.
day. Where can people find you? Check
Amazon. Amazon. You use the Digital Overlords distribution center.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're funding the AI system. It's like, I can't help it though. Darn it.
I wish it wasn't so. It is what it is. Like I said, technology can absolutely, there's really nothing fundamentally wrong with technology, but as a tool, every tool can be used in certain ways, just like a gun or a knife or anything. And when the technology ends up being used to control, oppress, monetize, commodify, then the tool is, then it's a dangerous situation, at least dangerous to what we call this existence. I'm not going to worry about the dangerous myself. I'm going to reboot myself and go, worst that happens is this life ends. And as soon as I'm on the other side, I go, what the heck was I ever worried about? And look at how crazy we were. And look at how close we got. We actually did pretty good, on that run. Let's go on to another planet and see what we do over there. That's probably much more real.
I don't need a do-over here. I'm done with this. Let's go. So I give me something a little better. Just a little little more chill.
This might be one of the better trajectories, that we're still here. after the technology that we have combined with our fear and our separatism, that we're still here actually is kind of a miracle. That more people don't kill each other or just take stuff in mass, just lawlessness is kind of a miracle. That people fundamentally are working. There's way by 99.999% people wanting to live in peace. Even the bad guys, when they're not doing the bad acts, they're eating and pooping and having sex and raising families and all that stuff. They really, for the most part, people aren't just being absolutely lawless. And I'm talking about the big laws, not little laws. The laws of nature says, hey, support each other. What an awesome conversation. I loved it.
Yeah, buddy. Well, I appreciate you. Where should people go if they want to find out about your work, watch documentaries?
I'm not a great marketer. I really am not.
I have to have a website, bud.
I don't even have a website.
You don't? Oh my goodness.
We're going to have a Eric Stephen Rankin website because I do a lot of interesting things. Listen to our podcast, Awakening Code Radio. You can find that. I do my little things. I do my workshops out at the Integratron. I speak at conferences like Contact in the Desert and all these Portal to Ascension and Disclosure Fest. But really, I just do what kind of falls into my localized world rather than trying to kill it. I would much rather have a deeper impact on a few people than a very shallow impact on millions of people. And even if that person was just you, if you and I, our interaction somehow grew each other, and I would have to think that it very possibly did, you grew me in this conversation, I would much rather have that than a 2-minute soundbite or a 30-second soundbite that got seen by 50 million people. So I'm just not in the mindset to market myself very well. And that's why I don't make much money.
And well, still meaning, or even still, I don't even know how many hits Sonic Geometry has, but it's quite a bit. So your work has made an impact.
Oh, and if you do want to find Sonic Geometry, go to sonicgeometry.com, because over the 10 years it's been out, hundreds of people have pirated it and still called it Sonic Geometry and pulled bits and pieces of it and not rewritten it, just actually reread the script that I wrote with new images, and I let it all stay. I don't go after any of them because to me, the information's important, and it's not about how I can protect it and copyright it and make money from it. If something's important, you want it to get out there. But, I am taken care of. I don't live a lavish life, but I live a great life, and I'm taken care of in my low expectation of what I want for it. It's low as far as material things and money, but it's high in experience and expansive thinking and friendship. Those things don't cost anything. The best things in life don't cost anything. Naps, sex, eating, laughter. I mean, so many walks, appreciating nature, swimming, dancing.
You said naps first.
Now you know a lot about me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, buddy. No, I love that. I absolutely totally agree. So you can search his book on Amazon and find it, since he can't market himself. As Above, So Below, The Quantum Teachings of Jesus. It's probably a phenomenal book. Haven't read it yet, but you can obviously get a sense of Eric and who he is. And Awakening Code Radio is excellent. And Sonic Geometry is excellent. So buddy, I appreciate you for existing and all your points of view and your work, and just man, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for this beautiful conversation.
All right, we'll see you soon. Thank you. I appreciate